I knocked out the 4 kids in one game, and after the game, about 20 students came up. Hey, you knocked those kids lights out. You knocked those guys lights out. And I looked at them like, yeah, you know what? Call me Lights Out.
Shawne Merriman. He entered the league like a force of nature, led one of the most vicious defenses the Chargers ever faced.
Transition from NFL chaos to MMA combat.
You know, in fact, I didn't start playing football first. I played basketball. And I was just aggressive. And so my coaches at the end of the basketball season said, you got a sport that you'll really like. And I asked my coach, I had no idea what to do. And they said, look, whoever has this football in their hands, hit them.
How old were you when you started playing football? And then can you give me the background?
You know, to be honest, I never really identified myself with football. We were homeless multiple times. You know, we lost our home and lived in shelters, lived in cars.
What was the transition period? Because I know that you didn't go straight into Lights Out. You had to have a period in between.
Yeah. When you hear former athletes struggling, it's 2 things. They miss the locker room and they miss the competition. And I did that, and that's what led me to really get into MMA.
When you're looking to recruit new fighters, what are you looking for?
I don't look at it as recruiting. I never really have. We're giving these up-and-coming superstars a platform. People want to watch fights, not just in the States, but globally. In my opinion, I don't think anybody's ever going to be bigger than the UFC.
I think the real question is who's going to take the number 2 spot.
It's a lot of pride and ego in this business. Either they want to be the UFC, which is crazy, ridiculous, right, or they want to be that number 2.
If somebody were to ask you for advice,
if you're consistent enough, good things going to happen.
Kicking Ass, Taking Names podcast, and today we are here with Shawne Merriman, and I have a special crafted message because we're in the age of AI, so I wanted to use ChatGPT to craft this. Check this out. He entered the league like a force of nature, drafted 12th overall in 2005. In just his first 3 seasons, he racked up more sacks than any player in NFL history at the time. 45.5 total, 3 Pro Bowls, and 17 sacks in just 12 games. Crazy in 2006. He was a defensive rookie of the year. People were even comparing him to in the early stages to Ray Lewis, basically. Led one of the most vicious defenses the Chargers ever faced. He was alongside Stephen Cooper, Luis Castillo, and Shawn Phillips. They were basically just well known. If you guys know football, I'm sure you guys know. And then the story doesn't stop there. Shawne actually then flipped the script, launching Lights Out Xtreme Fighting, a rising MMA league. And you guys are based out here in Vegas, right?
California.
And then, okay, so then you're here in Vegas.
But here, yeah.
Built businesses, mentored athletes, and stayed in the game, just in a different arena. Today we sit down with the man they call Lights Out because of his notorious ability to knock people out with his dude, you're huge, bro. I mean, doesn't surprise me. But a warrior, leader, a brand built on dominance. This is Kicking Ass, Taking Names with Shawne Merriman. Shawne, thank you so much for being here.
That was a hell of an intro, man. I got to get more into AI.
I was gonna do an intro, but then I said, if I do it this way, I'm not gonna mess up, and it'll sound better. And I don't think people really care. So honestly, when you're around someone like you that's accomplished so much, the intros kind of scare me because I'm like, oh, I gotta remember that. So I was like, I'm just gonna use AI.
I think that's cool, man. Especially with this time change, we talking how much AI is going to be implemented into sports and MMA, especially. We got a bunch of stuff going with AI, so you can't fight it. Bring it in, learn how to use it, just like you just did. Yeah. But it's going to be a part of everything we do. Yeah, yeah. And I was just at the multi-unit conference right across, and AI is just, it's on the rise. And rather than fight against it, let's implement it in our day-to-day life and see how it can help us. But with that being said, so Shawne, I mean, obviously you're most well known for your NFL career. I'd like to start there. How old were you when you started playing football? And then can you give me the background of football in your life, getting into football, and then that extreme rise that you had? Just kind of your backstory of what was your inspiration for that? It's so I grew up in Prince George's County, Maryland, which is a little bit outside of Washington, D.C. In fact, I didn't start playing football first. I played basketball. I was a hooper. And I kept fouling out of some games, right? And I was, I played I was a Ben Wallace. I was in rebounding, putbacks, defense. I'll give you 12, 9, and 7. I was one of those players. And I was just aggressive. And so my coaches at the end of the basketball season said, we think we got a sport that you'll really like. Yeah. And so they introduced me to football. And the first day that I went out to football practice, I think I was 11 or 12 years old. And I didn't even watch football at that time. I had no idea. I never really wasn't into football. I was in basketball. And I asked my coach, I had no idea what to do. And they said, look, whoever has this football in their hands, hit them. Yeah. That's what you do. And I looked at my coach. I said, That's it? So yeah, that's it. So okay, I can do that. So first play in practice, first full helmet, shoulder pads, and everything. Running back came out of the backfield, and I tracked him down, and I hit him. Hit this kid under the coolers, under the table that was on the sideline. Gatorade fell down. It was a crazy scene.
Yeah.
My first play out ever. And
it was your first time playing football.
First time ever. I'd never touched the field before, and I lit this kid up. Unfortunately, his mom was at the practice, and she went off of me bad. Don't hit my son like that, and I can't believe you did this. And I was shook. She was yelling at me. And then I went over, and my coaches, kind of whispered in my ear. He was like, "Yeah, do that. That's what we want. We want that." So I knew that I just had a knack for being on the field. Yeah. And it was a very rough time in Prince George's County in Washington, D.C. in those late 80s and 90s. I mean, it was, I think murder capital of the country, or top 5 somewhere. So we grew up in that era. So kind of football and sports in general was the outlet for me. And then when you learn how to play something a certain way, then that's the only way you know how to play. And that's how I continue to play the rest of my career. I just seek, hunt, destroy. And that was my mentality for 4 quarters. That was it.
Yeah, so you go from that, and then you got a nickname, Lights Out, and there's like a story that the nickname was because you knocked out 4 people. Was that practice, or
it was when I was 16, my sophomore year?
You just went to practice one day and you?
No, it was in the game. It was 4 guys and 4 kids in the game. At my sophomore year at Frederick Douglass High School in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. So I knocked out the 4 kids in one game, and after the game, about 20 students came up. The kids I knew in the school, and they said, "Man, you knocked those kids lights out. You knocked those guys lights out." And I looked at them like, "Yeah, you know what? Call me Lights Out." And I didn't plan it. It just kind of came out. And I remember getting to school on that Monday. This is pre-social media. It was no YouTube, no social media around, so nothing to go viral where everybody's seeing it. It just it spread that fast where people actually started calling me Lights that Monday in school. Yeah. So that's when I went home, convinced my mom to let me get this Lights Out tattoo on my right forearm. Took me about 2 weeks.
What is it?
It's a light switch in the hand, cutting the lights out. Show that? Yeah, cutting the lights out. That's crazy. And so it stuck with me. And it was something I couldn't get away from, because it was not only the style of play, but it was also how I played the game. And, how passionate I was just about football in general.
But you never played, you said, before the age of what, like 15?
12. I played 12 years old in my first year. So I played like 3 years of like youth football. Okay. And then to high school. So when you were doing that, like what, you just fell in love with the game? This is my, I'll give you my mentality in a nutshell. So it was my last year of youth football. I'm going to high school, Frederick Douglass High School in Marlboro. Well, my mom missed the registration date for me to sign up my freshman year. I got there, and all the shoulder pads and helmets, everything, all the equipment was given out. They had nothing. They had nothing to give me. And I got there on the 3rd day of their practice. And all the coaches came, and they're pretty pissed off. Like, how you 3 days late, why didn't you sign up? And they said, "Anyway, kid," because they didn't know me. So anyway, kid, what position you want to play? What position you want to play? I looked at the coaches and I said, "Coach, I don't care. I just want to hit somebody." Yeah. And they went over to another kid, and they took his helmet and shoulder pads off, and they made sure I had it. They went out, or they either bought it, they went out, and they made sure I had equipment, because they'd never heard anybody, especially a 14, 15-year-old kid say something like that. Yeah. Where that was my mentality. It's like, I don't care where you put me out in the field. I just want to go hit somebody. And that was just, it was always been my mentality. So I train also, I do kickboxing, and I was going to say, I started punching the bag because I was an angry kid, Right. I was mad. I was like, if I don't channel this, it's going to turn into something bad. What was the thing that made you so upset at that time? I think it was a couple things, really. Just our current situation in living. Like, we were homeless multiple times. We lost our home, and I lived in shelters, lived in cars. Me, my mom, my sister.
So your dad wasn't in the picture?
My dad wasn't in the picture. We got a good relationship now, but he wasn't. I didn't see my dad from like the ages of 11 till I was 25 or something like that. And so it was a lot of built up anger. Coming home, there was no food, eviction notices on the door, and so it was like I looked at that was my outlet, right? So I can go to practice for a couple hours a day, and I don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
But the reality always set when I got back home.
Yeah.
That I might come home and the lights could be off because we couldn't pay the bills.
Yeah.
It might be cold in there because the electricity's off because we couldn't, afford heat. And so I think those things kind of gave me an outlet to forget about everything I had going on for those couple hours while I was on the practice field. But I knew as soon as I got in the car and I pulled up back home that reality was going to set back in.
So it was like almost easier to deal with the hard training than it was to deal with just, the basic day to day.
At that point, it was almost like, therapy.
Happy place.
Like a happy place. It was a happy place. It was a happy place that I get a chance to go out there and, and play the way I played for those couple hours a day. In fact, my high school coaches, they wouldn't even let me hit my other teammates in practice.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even let me. They would, anytime we had hidden drills without bags or anything, it was like serious hidden drills.
Yeah. They
would send me to another field because they didn't want me to hurt any of my teammates.
But the other teams, did they know your reputation or?
Oh, yeah. And like I said, this is pre-social media, so it got around. It was like a folktale, It was it's like, man, who's this, who's this kid, man?
So you ever get in fights in high school?
Oh, yeah, plenty. Growing up in PG, Prince George's County and Washington, it was tough. Washington, D.C. area, it was tough around that time. And I grew up in an area called Forestville and in Capitol Heights, which is very notorious for being a bad place, at that time. And so, I would fight all the time. I would, I remember after school, we had a 7-Eleven up there. You'd fight on the side of the 7-Eleven. We fought.
Yeah.
I've probably been in 30 fights.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. So this makes a lot of sense why, like, I'm seeing like the mindset of like how that ended up leading to you getting into MMA, right? So I don't want to jump ahead because I want to go chronologically, but let's go now. You're in college and you're leaving college. You got in the NFL. When did you get drafted again?
2005.
2005, right? And then, so you were did you go back then? What was the rules for the NCAA? And then did you ever win anything in college?
Yeah, so I was all ACC, all American.
Yeah.
In college. And I went, you went to University of Maryland, so I stayed home.
Yeah.
I grew up 25 minutes from the.
But back then, were they allowed to draft you straight like how back in the?
No. So I actually verbally committed to University of Maryland my junior year. So I already was signed to go to college. I was like one of the first ones that already was fully signed to go to college by my junior year.
Yeah.
And it was very, nowadays, like I got a 14-year-old son. He'll be 15 coming up. And, he's going to college. He's getting invites to college.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
He hasn't touched high school yet.
You think he's going to go NFL or?
Yeah. It's up to him. He definitely has a talent. No, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
And he has a crazy work ethic. So I think with those two things, you got a pretty good shot. But we don't preach that. We talk what we need to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
What we need to do the next day.
Yeah.
And so anytime he even talk about college now, and he hadn't done anything in high school, I dropped the conversation. We need to go to work tomorrow. And that's the attitude around here.
Yeah. So and so you because I was gonna say if you think about Kobe was drafted. That was the whole you have to go to college first days.
You can't do that in football.
Yeah. So it was never like that.
No, you can't do that in football. It's too many grown men, and you can get yourself hurt.
Yeah.
And my sophomore year, in fact, I did think about it. My sophomore year in college. But you can't make that jump.
Yeah. You're going into the NFL. A lot of people would say you were on track to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was, I think it was like your right knee?
Left knee.
Left knee.
Yeah, so blew my knee out.
What ended up happening? Because out the gate, you were going hardcore.
Yeah.
Do you think you pushed yourself too hard?
No, I got cheap shotted in 2007 against the Titans. Two players had jumped on my knee and I blew my knee out. And so, the thing is when you go, when you have injury, anytime you go under the knife, when you get surgery, you're never the same, right? So, obviously that set me back. I missed all of 2008. And, I came back and I was fine from the knee, but the compensation, I ended up blowing my Achilles out.
Yeah.
After that. And the Achilles is the big one. That's the one that
if you lose that,
you lose
Achilles
that
heel,
one.
yeah.
Yeah. That's the, you never know how important that tendon is in your Achilles until you pop it. And I lost a lot of my burst and a lot of my explosion off the line of scrimmage. And that's all I was. I was, 268 pounds, being able to run like a running back.
Yeah.
And so for me, once that was gone, it was like, that was it.
That being so from there, are you mentally prepared for the time that comes after that? Because like a lot of times we talk about it in business.
Yeah.
But outside of business, that's a very similar type of situation because you identified with that. It's almost like you had your business, you lost it.
Yeah.
In sports, if your identity is like how Inky Johnson, and his arm, if you lose your ability to do what you were, how you identified, how did that affect you?
To be honest, I never really identified myself with football. It was who people knew me as. Yeah. But I never really relied on walking into a room and somebody saying, "Hey, that's Shawne Merriman from the Chargers or the Buffalo Bills or the NFL line." I never cared really. I'm still that way. People see me, I'm like, oh, okay. It's almost like such a past tense that I don't even. You
don't identify.
You don't identify it, and I didn't identify it within people identify with me, and then I was kind of smart enough to know that this game is not long anyway. Yeah. And in fact, tell you the truth, the way I played the game, I didn't want to play more than 10 years anyway. Okay. That was a very max. So when I see guys playing 15 years, I was like, no, I don't. That's not. You
see the videos behind the scenes, and they're really in pain too. Yeah. A lot of these guys.
Yeah. It's a rough sport, and it's a rough sport for somebody that plays the game at that level. And how I played the game, it was nothing that I wouldn't do on the field, whether it was jumping over a pile or diving for a sack or flipping somewhere. I mean, there was nothing that I wouldn't do or put my body through. And so when you have a mentality like that, you have to be very cautious, head-wise for sure, right? I mean, it's only been so many times you can have a big blow to your head before you have serious problems. Yeah. Which, thank God, I didn't, have any serious concussions or anything like that. It's just dangerous to play for a long period of time like that.
What was the transition period? Because I know that you didn't go straight into Lights Out. You had to have a period in between. Yeah. What was that? What did that look like?
So, we just talked about, just having a nickname like Lights Out and stuff like that. I owned trademarks and name and things like that. And I got into the clothing, the apparel business, where I started selling at Achilles. Over 100 stores in Achilles in the country, and DTLR, which is another big, a DTLR. I would think I was in close to 100 stores then, or 80 stores then around that time. So I was really, really strong in the apparel space, and that's where I wanted to be. But again, it wasn't action, right? I've always competed my whole entire life. And two, that's why a lot of guys, when you hear former athletes struggling, it's two things. They miss the locker room and they miss the competition. Yeah. You hear about the financial stuff, and I'm sure that all that stuff has a little bit into if you have some kind of financial problems or anything like that. But it's mainly because that locker room is gone. That regimen is gone. Yeah. That competition is gone. And so guys struggle trying to find that again. And I did that. And that's what led me to really get into MMA. I started training back in 2006. In fact, I was actually going to take a fight with Bellator, around 2015, 16, after I retired. Because I was training with all the guys anyway. And
wasn't also what back then it was Reggie. What's Reggie? He's also NFL, and he went straight to, at 47 years old. He fought in the UFC. Or not UFC.
Herschel Walker.
Herschel Walker.
Herschel Walker.
Sorry, Herschel Walker. Yeah. So I was mixing up, but Herschel Walker got in at 47.
He was in his early 40s. I don't know how old he was. He definitely was in his early 40s.
Yeah,
he was definitely in his early 40s. And he was, again, it's funny, this social media thing is so different now, because when you do something, everybody see it. It's instant, right? Which is a great thing. Great thing, by the way. But Herschel Walker, he had like 3 fights. He was 3-0 in his early 40s. And, even with us now, with Lights Out Xtreme Fighting, I'm always looking for former athletes. Just trying to make that transition.
When you switched in, what year was it officially founded again?
2019.
2019. Okay, so now, you're at 6 years, and you started building it. So now,
it's really at 4 because the pandemic, we shut down for 2.
Right. So that affected you guys. Dana actually grew during that time too. But I mean,
he's smart, man. Dana, I got a really good relationship with Dana. And I'll go see him sometime. We text or call or whatever. He's just, I like to be around people in general like that. Just gonna get shit done, and there's nothing that you're gonna stop him from doing. And again, why everybody was telling Dana to not go forward and have these fights during the pandemic, he's like, no, we're Fight Island. We're gonna do something. It's happening. And that is why the UFC is who they are. Because you got him mainly, but then he has everybody else has that same mindset to go push forward no matter what. And that actually, they were getting, crazy enough, they were getting viewerships like 1 point something million or 2 million people watching the fight, a regular, no names on the card, no big names on the card, because nobody else had anything going on during the pandemic, and that increased their value because nobody else had nothing going.
Yeah, and you could hear the shots. When you could hear those shots in the cage. But what I was gonna ask is, so when you started, what made you decide to start? First off,
a couple things. So when I retired, I got straight into the broadcasting business. I was at NFL Network a couple of years, Fox Sports a couple of years, ESPN a couple of years, WWE Network. I did a lot of local stuff for the Chargers games, post game on ABC, CBS. So I had an extensive background into networks and broadcasting and TV, and then not as a talent, but also understand who's doing what, who's directing the show, what signals is going out where, and why we got to get off of at a certain time to read a commercial, thing on the way out. So it was understanding the landscape of media in general. Now you combine that with my love for the sport of MMA, training with these guys, knowing who the coaches, managers, fighters. I was around more of the MMA fighters than I was around football players during the off seasons. I was around them a lot more, and then so when you start to learn the business and the industry, and TV, so now you got a 2 combination of like the perfect storm and what happened in building what I've built.
Did you ever think for a second, because when you start a new business, you always try to think about the potential scale of it, and you think about the potential setbacks. Do you ever think like, man, UFC's right there, we're right here, it's or Bellator already, Strikeforce, what happened to all these PFL, and what's happening, are we going to combine? At what point? Like, is there a goal to buy more? What was the idea behind getting into it, and then not just saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to just do it just for the heck of it, but like this is, what's the plan behind it? Because you obviously have to have had a plan to get it to the point where it's still going.
Well, first of all, content is king, right? I mean, people want to watch fights, not just in the States, but globally, and MMA has become such a global phenomenon that people are watching our fights all over the world now when they get distributed in South America, Central America. Some of them may not even know who the hell I am because they don't watch American football, but they know who Lights the promotion is, which is great. I'm okay with that. But for us, I looked at it as, okay, well, in my opinion, I could be wrong, but in my opinion, I don't think anybody's ever going to be bigger than the UFC, ever. I don't care if someone comes in, they got $20 billion, and they want to go buy all the biggest name fighters.
Yeah, that spot was harder and fought for. And
it's because they're in the people's minds. They are the brand of MMA. They are. They're the Coca-Cola of drinks. That's just who they are. But that doesn't mean that people like Sprite. People like Pepsi, Diet Pepsi. So that's how I look at it. You know, just because you got Verizon, it's people with T-Mobile, it's people with Cricket. You know, it's the Apple phones and Samsung phones. And so that's when I think about when people say that, it's like, first of all, we are a direct feeder to the UFC. You know, I think we sent a total of about 7 guys to the UFC last year. Yeah. Close to. Okay. Or who came straight from having a fight with us straight to getting called up to the UFC. Yeah. Either one fight deal or multi-fight or something.
How does that work, by the way? Do they finish their contract with you and then they just open a new one?
Yeah. In fact, you know, we've let guys out of contracts if the UFC wanted them. Yeah. For us, branding wise, it's great. You know, if they go out there and they show out and they look great in the UFC,
that'll attract new fighters.
They came from Lights Out. Yeah. And that's what's happening right now. That most of our, when I first started, dude, you got promotions that's been around a lot longer than us, right? Who more known, who's already sent fighters to the UFC.
Who's paying who too?
Yeah.
How much?
Yeah. And so, you know, they've already been established. So yeah, when I came into the MMA scene with my own, you know, kind of organization with Lights Out Xtreme Fighting, people knew who I was as a football player, but they had no idea about Lights Out. Yeah. You know, so we had to kind of break a lot of ground in this space. And the difference is, you know, when I came into and I launched, is that I already had a built-in platform of NFL fans and NFL eyeballs, which we immediately started to bring over, which has never been done in this sport, really. Yeah. You know, and so we had a jump start in this thing like no other. Yeah. And where we're at right now, we're the most distributed regional promotion in the world. We get more viewers than anybody else on a regional basis. This is a regional promote. It's not the UFC. Yeah. Right? Again, having a TV background, having a network background, working at these networks,
having the connections,
having the relationships there, all those things helped. My director and all these came NFL Network and producers from Fox Sports. These are all people I already knew.
So when you're looking to recruit new fighters, what are you looking for? Is it specifically just the win rate, or do you look for showmanship? I mean, how do you?
It's both. It's both, man. Look, you know, I got a nickname like Lights Out, dude. It's obviously I like personality. I love personality. Yeah. Especially when somebody can back it up. Yeah. You mean, you know, you get these guys that are big talkers and it sounds crazy and it's all, you know, and they get there and they lay an egg, right? You're like, dude, come on. You sold the hell out of this fight, but you got to fight too. Yeah. You know, and so you obviously want big personalities. And I don't look at it as recruiting. I never really have. We're giving these up and coming superstars a platform, and you're hoping to find your young Ronda Rousey, right? Your young Conor McGregor. You're looking for the young John Jones or Khabibs, and you're looking for these next up and coming guys, and you give them a platform to be seen. Yeah. And because of our distribution. And you can go to your local bar right now, any bar right now, and go to any programming that's on Fubo, Bally's, Amazon Freevee, or any one of these bigger networks. You're going to find Lights Out Xtreme Fighting. Yeah. So we're not at this point. We're not even trying to recruit. We're turning down fighters because we have so many, right, that we want to give a shot to, and we feel that has that potential to go to the UFC. You know, and so we're having 12 to 14 fights every in one night, right? So we have a card of 14 fights, and we're having to fight every 4 to 5 weeks. Yeah. You know, and if it was up to me, I would have 2 a month. Yeah. Because I'm crazy, but you know, when you're making these strides that we have, it's pretty unusual to move at this pace that we're doing.
So, what do you think is the difference then between that, Strikeforce, Bellator? I mean, like, what's even in ONE FC, you know, they've been making a big jump. Like, how is first off, I guess, how does somebody take that? I think the real question is who's going to take the number 2 spot, right? How's that going to be done?
You know, it's funny. It's a lot of pride and ego in this business, right? Everybody want to be like that. Either they want to be the UFC, which is crazy, ridiculous, or they want to be that number 2. Yeah. And for us, it's not even about, we want to be different. We want to be an incubator. We want to do stuff that hasn't been done in this sport. That's all I care about, is growing a brand on Lights Out and what we need to do in order for us to be different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I always use this quote all the time that, you know, we create, we don't compete.
Mm-hmm.
That we create things that's not there.
Yeah.
That's how we separate ourselves. We're not trying to follow trends. We're not trying to be, oh yeah, we want to be bigger than this promotion. We want, like, that's stupid. You know, there's no longevity in that.
Yeah.
Because there's two things going to happen. You're going to try to spin your way to the top and fail like some of these other promotions have done, trying to be the number 2 or co-leaders of the sport.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. Or you're just going to keep running up on the wall because you're not even going to put a dent in the landscape of MMA because UFC is there.
Yeah.
You're not even putting a dent in there. So if you have that mindset that you want to be number 2 or you want to be co-leaders of the MMA space,
yeah,
you're going to lose.
Okay, so let's switch gears here. But speaking of mindset, so I want to get your advice because a lot of things that we do, I just want to make sure we hit on this, is our podcast primarily is a lot of people who are looking for advice. They're starting up. They're getting into it. If somebody were to ask you for advice, let's start with your life advice and then we'll go into business advice. So what's your advice for life, that something that you would take in from your perspective? They'd say, okay, that's a Shawne Merriman answer.
Yeah.
What would that be?
Consistency always gonna win. Really, consistency always wins. Because you can do something long enough, you're gonna have a breakthrough. You're gonna get really good at it at some point, and the consistency is gonna allow you to keep moving forward no matter what. And some of these, if you keep doing it, the wins, it could be very small. And by the time you get to where you want to go, they're gonna be big. Or you can have a big win just because you're consistent. At some point in time when you're consistent enough, that breakthrough is gonna happen. And that's the mindset you always have to carry in life, man. Like it's 7 days a week. It's 7 days a week. And if you're consistent enough, good things gonna happen. May not happen when you want them to happen, but they're going to happen. It is 100% going to happen if you're consistent long enough. It might just take a little bit longer, or you might have to go a different direction than you plan to. Ultimately, you're going to get to where you want to be. You just have to stay consistent long enough.
And what about when it comes to your strategy, your business strategy?
Yeah.
What else do you see? Like, what have you learned over time that you would say is something you've learned since? Because you went in and you hit everything and you knock it out of the park, but doesn't always happen. Consistency is required. Now, what's your strategic mindset behind it?
I think that, people just procrastinate so much and find every excuse not to do something that they have already lost the battle before they even started. Certain people, like, you have a goal, right? And certain people won't even move forward towards that goal unless they think that everything is perfect and everything is great. And ultimately, they never even get started. They never get started. So, my thing is that, I'll plan something. You got to put a plan in place. You can't just do stuff. Put as much of that plan together as you think you need to be successful. And you get up the next day and you do that shit. And so that's me. That's me in a nutshell. It's we got all this tech and AI and stuff we're doing Lights Out. I wasn't a tech guy. I played football. I wasn't in the tech field. But I wanted to do it, and so I started reaching out to people who I know was good at that space. Hey, I need help. Come over here. This is what I want to do. Let's put it together, and let's do it. And so that's my mentality literally with everything is plan and go. Because a lot of people just spend too much time, man, and procrastinating before they do anything. They've already beat themselves up enough where they won't even start.
I guess one more question. This is specifically an athlete's question. Is how do you approach losses? How do you approach those times where you have not achieved that easy outcome, but you actually have setbacks?
It's never a loss when you learn. It's never a loss because you'll have a setback and you start to figure things out and why you failed at what you're doing. If you start to figure out like, oh, okay, that didn't work because of this, and now you know something for next time, you didn't lose. You learned. And out of all the things that that I've done that wasn't successful, it led me to where I'm at right now. And so, even when I have, there's nothing about, certain areas that you can ask me that I don't know something in. It's because I tried it and it didn't work, or I tried and I got really good at it. And so there's something that I can talk to you about, and you can name from streaming to the MMA business to sponsorship to tech. There's you can ask me anything you want, and I can tell you a little bit about it. Either because it didn't work, or because I got really good and successful at it. And so then I never really took a strong loss. I learned from what didn't work.
Where do you see the Lights Out, and where do you see yourself? I know you said focus on tomorrow, but what about your long-term vision? Where do you want this to go?
Well, this is my thing. When investors want to hear this, or you talk with any VCs, or anybody in the capital space or finance space, they want you to put together these 3, 5, 8, 10. They want you to put the
projection,
these projections. Yeah. Why do I got to stop? Why do I have to stop? Why? You want to know my 30-year plan? Sure. You get what I mean? So
yeah,
of course you chip away at everything every day. You got to have a plan. You got to have benchmarks. Hey, we need to be here by year 1, year 2. We need to be here. So you got to do that. But nobody never asked what's a 30-year plan. Why do I have to stop at 5?
Yeah.
Why do I have to stop at 8? Why do I have to stop at 10?
Yeah.
And so when you're built a certain way, you don't have a mentality to ever exit. You might exit a company, but it's not going to stop you from creating a new one or being a part of a new one and finding something maybe that's not doing well, get in that, grow it, exit that, and then you do it again.
Yeah.
And so, nobody ever asks a 30-year plan.
Yeah.
And, but again, to get that 30-year plan, yes, you do need 3, 5, 8. You need those benchmarks. But it's not for me, it's, as long as my health is intact and I can physically do it, it's not going to stop.
That's good. Well, Shawne, I want to thank you for your time. I do have some suggestions. I know a couple guys are really good fighters. They would love the opportunity.
Yeah.
And with that being said, if you guys have any questions, this is one of those that I would like to possibly do a second part of, like in the future, and I'll be in Vegas and stuff. And so if you guys have any questions for Shawne, and also to look him up, Shawne, if you want to plug your next fight date or anything like that, you can do that as well.
Check us out, Lights Out Xtreme Fighting, May 10th. We'll be in Long Beach, California. I think the tickets are on sale now at lightsoutxf.com. And also make sure you download Lights Out Sports TV. It's free. It's on every smart TV device, iOS and Android. Tons of free live sports there. Got a big tailgate show coming up with during NFL season. Make sure you download. Check us out. KTAN. Thank you guys, man, for having me. Make sure you guys download, watch this episode, watch the future episodes. But enjoy coming out, man. Appreciate it.